Session. Next session is about DMN, the decision model and notation. Quick question, is anyone here familiar with DMN? Has anyone been using DMN? So we've got a couple of folks here. This is really it's a new standard, a new way of representing business rules. So DMN is really doing for business rules what BPMN did for business processes. It makes the rules much more accessible to business users, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest actually now, especially here amongst financial services companies in particular, in using DMN as a way of enabling their business units to express the complex rules that they need to as far for many of the business transactions. So I'm very happy that today we have one of our foremost experts in DMN to talk to us, Matteo Matari. Matteo is a relatively recent addition to Red Hat. He's a senior software engineer, but he has been very active in the open source community prior to joining Red Hat. So as soon as he's set up, we'll hand over. All right, Matteo, everybody.
Let me just keep changes. Okay. That one is running. Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Matteo, and this presentation is about DMN, Decision Model and Notation Standard, and rule support for DMN. So how you can use rules to execute a model defined with this notation. This is what I'm going to present today. So for those of you that are not really acquainted with DMN, we're going to have a short introduction about it, and I will describe the components of a DMN solution. Then we are going to speak about conformance level and why I believe it's important for you to know about it and how DMN fits in a big picture of standards in this space. And then I will have some discrete amount of time for a demo, a working demo for a complete end-to-end solution about the DMN. So what is DMN? There is this quote that I've selected, which is from Bruce Silver. You may know him because he wrote some successful book about BPMN methodology. This is the only verbatim that I'm going to read. So DMN stands for Decision Model Notation and is a relatively new standards managed by OMG, the organization behind BPMN. It's trying to do for business decision management what BPMN did for business process management a decade ago. Empower the business to take charge of the logic that drives its operation through a vendor-independent diagramming language. You can read the full article over there, and you're going to have all the links in the slides later. What is so DMN is composed of a different section and provides some different part of the specification. Here in this slide, I've highlighted the three that I believe are the most important for you to get straight away. So DMN provides a graphical language for decision modeling and includes a standard notation for decision tables. This is what you see pictured on the left. It also provides an expression language called FEEL. So think about it as an expression language to provide mathematical formulas for the moment. And DMN also provides, that is very important, a meta model and interchange format. And this is where we're going to speak about the conformance level. Just a very brief history about DMN, because as we spoke, it's a relatively new standard. The first version was released in September 2015. However, it had a few problems that prevented vendors like us to provide a full working solution. And this was only in June 2016, so last year, that they were solved. And so we are now able to provide to you an executable engine that can run the model defined with these standards. You can see the specification documents at this website. It's free to download, it's free to access, so it's really great if you need all the technical information. Let's just jump right in, and let's see which are the components that define a DMN solution. Here is an example, maybe a simplistic one, but it's the one that I've chosen to show that it's kind of really, it's a very simple standard, and it's also one of the reasons why I like it. we can immediately see that there are a few boxes with some limited type of shapes, and there are edges. This describes the hierarchy of your decision model. The nodes, the shapes that have the round corner, those are called input nodes. And those are, you have to think about it as the input of your model. So what you supply the model in order to come to a decision. Then you have the standard rectangular shape type, and those are decision nodes. Those are your decision. Then behind this decision, you still have a graphical notation to represent how you're going to elaborate on this decision. So just to summarize, application risk, routing, eligibility, those are the decisions that you're going to evaluate with your model, and application is the input of the input data of your model. The edges describes the requirement that you need in order to evaluate a decision. And similarly, if we focus on one specific decision, then the edges that are incoming represents all the required input that you need to have in order to elaborate this decision. So, for example, routing needs to know that, okay, you have decided about application risk, you have decided about eligibility, but also you need to have also the original input data, the application forms, because maybe you need to pull some other data out as well. Eligibility needs to know about the application, so the input data form, but also needs to know about this shape, and this is called the business knowledge model. This is with the shape with the cut corner. This represents like a function, so something that maybe, I don't know, a specific department or a business analyst has provided to you as a reusable function that you can use in your model. So eligibility, in order to conclude about what is the eligibility, we need to know the input data, but also we need to know the function that elaborates on this data. And also behind business knowledge model nodes, you can have still this graphical notation. Here I provided another example, and this is a decision table. We are going to see the graphical language for decision table now with this example. So we can notice immediately decision table has a name, and this is normally the same name that you have behind the original node shape. And then you have each rule represented as a row. Maybe some of you who are already familiar with this decision table will see that is quite similar, although there are some differences, because in here, in this standard, rules are numbered, and this is important, we're going to see immediately now. So you have your rules represented on the row, okay? And then you have on the leftmost side of the decision table, you have your input data. So in this case, existing customer and application risk score represent some inputs of the decision table. What you have in the cells are the criteria. So these represents maybe a Boolean check, may represent some greater than, some ranges. And once you have, depending on the input, you have a row that matches. Then you have on the rightmost side of the decision table the output column. So this represents the output that you're going to receive from the decision table. So this is the result column that is pictured on the right. Finally, it's important to know is that on the up left corner, we have the hit policy. The hit policy here is abbreviated with U and stands for unique. You can have several hit policies. So this governs the behavior on how the decision table is going to provide you with the result. And unique means that for any input that you provide to this decision table, only one row must match. If you have more than one matching, then you will receive an error. You have other hit policy, for instance, like priority, in order to select, or just give me the first one that matches, or you can accumulate on the results, and so on. I didn't mention, if you have any question, feel free to raise your hand, interrupt me. Also, if I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know. Huh? But I would like to make it interactive, maybe also later with the demo, please let me know. We have introduced that the standards define an expression language called FEEL. FEEL stands for friendly enough expression language, and it aims to bridge the gap between when you define the model and actually when you execute it. simplifying maybe a little bit, it's a way to replace with a nicer syntax Excel formulas that tend to be a little bit lispy sometimes. So if you want a really layman's term reason about why these emerge, it's for this. And it's because indeed you can use it in decision tables, is the one that we've seen just before, and directly in the decision required diagram, so in the hierarchical diagram, you can simply say, okay, if I need to make a decision and I simply want a ratio out of it, you can directly use a field expression. So just to summarize, in this decision table, the criteria that you see in these columns are field expressions, okay? And it's important for you to know that there are two variants of field actually defined in the standard. One is a simplified version, S field, and this is available only at conformance level 2, while the full support for the field implementation is mandated by the standard only at level 3. Let's see an example on how we can use a field in another context. So we can use field as well for representing a function. And this is a graphical notation for a boxed expression. And it's a graphical notation for describing a function. I have its name. So this corresponds, again, to the decision required diagram, which decision or which business knowledge model you are executing. You have the parameters here. We have 4 of them. And then you have some context entries that represents your local variables. You have to think about it if you are a Java-oriented developer. It's a map, it's a hash map, or it's a key value store. And you define here, OK, in order to make this function, I need to do some steps. OK, so monthly fee is going to be my key. And in this case, it's going to be an expression for if then else about field. If I need to calculate a monthly repayment, this is going to be another field expression for a mathematical expression. And finally, once you have built all this context for your local variables, maybe you want to summarize the result because it's a very simple ratio or a summary, like in this example, and this is the one shown below. So when this function triggers, you receive 4 inputs. You will have some field context to make the calculation, and then the end result is going to be a binary expression for simply a sum. OK? Sure. Sorry, can you read on the right-hand side?
When you define all the code,
yeah.
say I don't want to define the code, I want to put a function. Is that technically there?
You cannot do immediately here. In the standard the question is, OK, if I don't want to define the code right here, can I do it somewhere else? Well, maybe you can define it simply in another decision. So you actually, when you have a business knowledge model, this is actually the reason why the standard provides it. So you can receive the business knowledge model as an input from it. So you can call it like it will be like a custom. If I remember correct, in Excel you can define custom functions. So this will look similarly to what in Excel you would have a custom function. You simply say, OK, I'm going to have the field custom function defined here for the business knowledge model. Or the standard also provides some more advanced way to import function and import external code. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
OK. We can check also in more details later for the exact detail.
I have a question on the decision table part. In the decision table, can you have set membership conditions, predicates?
Can you have, sorry, which
Set
kind?
membership.
Same membership.
Set membership. So one of the values in the cell should be a member of a predefined set.
Ah, yes, yes. So the question is, if I understand correctly, is like, does field provide a construct to check that a specific value is contained in a predefined set? And there is. So there is the construct of field that says it looks like variable x in, and you provide a list. So in this case, it's like a bigger case of a set. Yeah. So you can check to say in a specific cell, you say, I don't know, for instance, like the application score is in, I don't know, the list of, a set of value. You can say 90 or 95 or 110, something like that.
Follow-up question to that is the set of values can be huge. For example, if you want to check if a patient has diabetes, the list of ICD-10 codes would be huge. Can you, does the standard support
Yeah, so the question is, okay, in that specific case, if you're going to check for value contained in a set, the set might be outgrown. So normally this is about, but this is more about methodology. So this is, the standard provides ways to, in order not to have, because it will be a bad practice, like to put a huge set of values indirectly here. So in the methodologies, you see different strategies or pattern on how the DMN standards provide you a better way to describe these kind of requirements. Does it answer your question? Okay. So are there any other questions? Okay. So let's speak about the conformance level and why I believe it's important for you to know. The specifications, so the standards, define 3 levels of conformances. The first level is about mandates that the actual runtime or tool must provide authoring for decision requirement diagram, decision logic, and decision table. So, but it doesn't mandate any execution. So that means that at this level, you have something that you can only use it for documentation purposes. So you want to describe a model, but you cannot actually run it. It's only with the conformance level 2 that the specs defines that everything from level 1 plus execution plus you have the sfill expression language. So the simplified version of fill, not all the constructs that is available to you, but it starts to mandate execution. So it's at a level 2 that we have this step. And conformance level 3 is everything from level 2 plus the support for the fill expression language, including boxed expressions, so some of the graphical notation that we see. And I would like you to keep in mind about this, because this is indeed what is coming from the standard, so what the specs mandates. And then you will see different vendor telling you which conformance level they define, they support in order for you to know. And this is at the standard level. Sometimes, maybe this is not enough. Sometimes, maybe you need to know if specific constructs are supported and if there are any small difference in support. So the original DMN specification does not provide a TCK. The TCK stands for Technology Compatibility Kit, and it's a way of a unit test, basically, to ensure that a specific execution engine really support the different constructs that are available at a different level. Because the DMN standard does not provide it, it's actually being doing by a community effort. You will see different of the contributors listed in the page. There is it's on GitHub, so you are welcome to check it out. And there you can really say, okay, if I have some field-specific construct, I want to check the rules execution engine support it or not. And it does, because rules supports conformance level 3. So with rules, you receive a conformance level 3 runtime engine. So it means that when you define a model with the DMN, you can use it, you export it in a KJAR, and it's available. It supports all of the function, all of the construct is supported by the rules execution engine. And it's the way that I wanted to present on this slide here. Let's see how DMN fits in a broader picture. Let's say that you have a business process defined with BPMN. And at a certain point, you want to decide on some routing. OK, so now we know about DMN. We learned a little. And then we know, OK, if here I have some more complex logic, instead of cabling it inside the task specifically, I can call out to a DMN execution. So I can delegate from the task to the decision model. In the decision model, I can express how my decision making is structured. I can use the graphical notation for decision table. I can use a field expression if I want to. And so I believe this is really the best way, one of the best examples that you can show how really DMN is a great tool especially for business analysts that want to express their decision logic. And then what happens is that as you have this delegation, the execution model will run, maybe with rules if you choose so, and the result that you receive, you can have it back in the task of BPMN, and then you can simply straight away use it in the gateway to decide if you want to decline the customer or if you want to accept and therefore offer the product. Question?
I saw you use this PPM model to support directly leverage this in a web application, so it's not even PPM function like the process.
OK, I'll try to summarize to understand if I understood the question. So basically, when I define maybe I define the BPMN process is some department that defines it, and then maybe they will decide to, in the task, simply not to just go directly inside of it and cable it the decision model. You can call it out and delegate it.
So I want to directly leverage this in the web application instead of the PM application. Pure web, which means I can leverage some API. The API can give me the decision based on the DMN implementation.
OK, so that is the
application itself, not in the PPM.
OK, yeah. So if I understood the question is like you would like to use directly the DMN from a web app, maybe with a REST call and so on. I'm going to have it in the demo, and maybe I had not expressed it super well. This is an example of integration. It is not the only example. So of course, here is an example of integrating BPMN with DMN. I think it's valuable for those that use also the BPMN standard. But of course, you can use the DMN directly, just simply pure DMN with the rules execution engine, for instance. You can call it locally, you can call it with a REST call. OK. So indeed, I'm going to show now an end-to-end DMN solution for my demo. Just a word of introduction. I mentioned that the rules provide a conformance level 3 execution engine, but we don't provide an editor, a diagrammer, just yet. When it will be available, it will be an additional option for you that you can use. So for today's example, I'm going to show you an example of openness and collaboration. With Red Hat, we have some partners that that provides diagramming and editor capabilities with their product. And one of them is Trisotech. So they provide modeling and authoring at the conformance level 3. They also integrate with third partner, like Bruce Silver that I mentioned before, for their methodology and training. And we are going to show you an example for the Red Hat rules execution engine for the actual execution of the model. And this is possible thanks to open source, but also thanks to the decision model being a standard, the decision model annotation being the standard defined. And this is what we can integrate off. This is one example. We can integrate with any partner that basically provides a diagramming editor because it's defined as an interchange from the standard. And once you have your DMN file, you can use it in the rules execution engine directly to run. Let's go to the demo. Each things, OK. So first of all, I'm going to draw a very simple model. And you guys can see? OK. So let's take a very simplistic example for an insurance. And let's say that I have just a couple of inputs that I need to know in order to know if to provide my product. I'm going to zoom it a little bit. Do you see it? OK? So let's say that I need to know from a customer, in order to decide what is the total price of the insurance, I need to know the age, and I need to know if the customer already had some previous accident. So I'm going to need to input data node with SYN. So this represents the previous incidents. This represents the input to the model. we can also directly right now define the type of data that I'm going to receive. So these are the types that are defined in the standards out of the box. However, Phil provides a way to express more complex and structured data. For the purpose of the demo, we are going to stick only with the basic input types. And OK, so the age is a number, and if it had previous incident, it's going to be a Boolean. So this represents my input. And now I need to decide what is going to be the total price for insurance. So this is to insurance total price. OK, so now we know that those are my inputs, and that is the decision I want to make. As we've seen in the introduction, then I need to define some requirements. So I need to say, OK, this is in order to come to this decision, the decision needs to know about my input data. Then I can now define the decision logic. So now that from the insurance total price, I know about the age, I know if the customer had previous incidents, I can decide how I'm going to price it. So I'm going to say for the decision logic, and I'm going to use a decision table. I can simply say if it is older than 25 and I didn't have any previous incident, it's going to be 1,000. Sorry, totally made that number, but I would like to show how it's really simple to come up with these models and later execute it. Then we can also say, OK, it's still older than 25 and it had previous incident. Then I'm going to price it 1,250. And then we can use some more complex field construct. So that is a simple, oh, sorry, maybe, OK. I can zoom it a little bit. OK. So this is a very simple check. In field, you have some more helpful for constraint checks, for instance, for ranges. So this is a way to say any value of the values comprised between 18 and 25. You can also have like open-ended and so on. And so if I didn't have any previous incident, it's going to be, whoops, my mouse is really bad. It's going to be 2,000. And if you have the final one, if it is between 18 and still 25 and it had previous accident, OK, it's going to be really expensive and it's going to be this way. So this is a very, I believe it's a very simple way that business analysts can define the decision logic. The graphical notation for decision table is as well pretty simple. One feature that I personally like it a lot, and this is also defined in the standard, is that you can merge the cells. So this is a way to have a more compact representation of the decision table. There are other ways to represent the decision tables, but for the purpose of the demo, we are going to focus on this one. So here we've defined our logic. So we have defined basically everything that we need in order to do some execution. So I can simply test it here. And let's say that I'm 35 and I didn't have any previous accident. So here I'm using the test form. I can run it, and I receive two messages. The first one is that it calculated the price, but I have some error. This is the validation. This is as well, so I did a runtime execution. Behind the scene, there is the rules execution engine for DMN, and it has provided me as well some validation messages. In this case, because from the standards, I need to define what is going to be the output of this decision. That is a number. I can run it again, and this time the error disappeared, and I have directly the information box that is telling me, OK, you have provided the two inputs required. The rules execution engine has executed this decision model, and the total result is 1,000. This is consistent with what we have defined, because it has taken this path So the heat policy I didn't mention by default is intended as a unique. So there was only the match for one row. That is good, and therefore the result is 1,000. Everybody with me? Looks good so far? OK. Now I'm going to show a little bit of more coding demo. So let me just, can you see? OK. So what I have here, in rules, everything is a kjar. So normally when you define, if you are more experienced about how to make a rules project, normally you have this kjar that contains your rule assets, so the DRL file or the decision tables and so on. What I have here, it's a kjar that I pre-built with the same DMN file that I just shown you on the editor, okay? And this is this XML that is defined in the kjar. It's indeed the XML that the specification mandates. It must be the persistent representation of the model that we just seen. Of course, I'm not going to demo on the XML directly. I'm just going to show the code. So the first thing that you need to do when you have a kjar project is maybe you want to embed some testing of it. So we are going to test this decision model right away directly with the rules execution engine. The first thing that every time you need is the key service instance. And from it, you can retrieve the key container that represents your kjar. If you're not familiar with Rules API, please don't worry. It's just a way to represent your context of this kjar that we are defined. So we are simply saying, OK, this container contains, in this case, my decision model. The next thing that I can do is, and this is the new part, is to have the DMN runtime. So this is a standard way from the key API to retrieve a runtime from a key container. And with this object, the DMN runtime, I can call several API methods to have the model, have some input data, and execute the model. The first thing that I can do is to say, OK, I need to have the model located. How can you locate the model? There are several possibilities. One thing that the standards provides is that for each of the model, you have a name and its namespace. This is standard XML. So within think about if you are more a Java-oriented developer, it's more like a package and your class. So you have the namespace. In this case, is this string of text. And the name of my model is DMN demo. This is what I have here. So I have located from the runtime, I simply say, get me the model that is inside this kjar. What I can do now from the DMN runtime is I can say, give me a new context. And this is the context represents your input data that you're going to supply. OK? So for the context, you can say, please say set. I want to set actually two inputs. One is age, as we've seen. And we have as well the had previous incident in and in this case, we're going to say true. OK. Yes. Very good remark. And I forgot to mention. So thank you for this. The comment was, in this case, for my inputs, I'm having a variable that contains a space. And that is because in my model, the label that you see here, you've seen that age, OK, is a simple string without any space. And in this case, it looks more like a label. But actually, thanks to the DMN specification, the field standard, you have a variable defined with space in the context. So had previous incidents, it's indeed defined with a space. Maybe it's a bit of a headache for those of you maybe like me that are developer-oriented. But business analysts like it. Is a possibility. And so it's good for you to know. Thanks again for the comment. So here you have, we have supplied all the variables that we need to receive. I should put down my mouse. OK. And then now we have, from the runtime, we have two things ready. We have the model that we want to execute, and we have the data, the input data that we want to provide for executing the model.
Quick question.
Sure.
Does DMN support complex data models, which are, let's say, an XML-based data model?
Absolutely. So actually, so the question is, does DMN support complex data types as an input and actually during the model? The answer is yes. For the purpose of the demo, I'm not going through. Normally, here I'm providing, in this case, an integer literal and a Boolean literal. There are several that correspond one-to-one to a field basic data type. In field, you can define complex data types, like a POJO, let's say, or a hash map. And with rules execution engine, we provide a way that if you have a map or if you have a POJO, you can annotate it, and therefore it will be automatically recognized.
Just a follow-up. Does
Sure.
it even support XML? Suppose if you have an XML schema,
Mm-hmm.
right, document, can I import it into my DMN model, and in the REST API, I can give as input my XML document, which is an instance of the XML schema?
OK, so if I understood correctly, the question is that you have some complex structure defined as an XML schema, and you would like to use it. There are several possibilities. So actually, this problem is split, I would say, in two parts. One is for the diagramming, and one is for the execution. For the diagramming, I think that different vendors are going to provide their own mechanism. I can speak basically for the runtime engine. For the runtime engine, the way that I would personally go is that from the XML schema, you can XJC and generate your POJO representation, say in JAXB, for instance. And then from that one, you can simply have the annotation to make the fields correspond. Because what you may end up with is that some fields, basically, of your data structure maybe are not compatible with fill. For any reason. Okay, we've seen that space is compatible, but there are some specific keywords that you cannot reuse. So the way that I would go is that I will take the XML schema, I will generate the POJO with JAXP or any other specification as you might like. There are some annotation that you can provide in order for the rules execution engine to say, OK, this is my complex data structure. I know now that thanks to annotation that this field corresponds to this input name, basically. Does it answer the question?
Yeah, but what maybe we can take a stop.
OK, we can check it in detail offline. Another question?
Can you nest your decision-making process? In other words, the output from one of the decisions becomes the input to another decision-making.
OK, so the question is if you can nest decisions in one another. The way that I would go is that here actually you have defined the requirements. So yes, you can have an edge that from one decision goes to another, and that represents indeed, like in the, I think that I had it in the original presentation. Basically, it's only after you have decided about application risk that you can decide about routing. So this is a way for you to represent hierarchical decision model. Does it answer the question? OK. So back to my code. And now what I want to do is that I want to execute this one specifically. So DMN runtime. And now I can say evaluate. And I need two parameters, the model that I want to do and the execution. So this result is going to be a structure that comprises the end result and some helpful debug messages, some return messages. What I can do is that in the DMN result, I have the my decision results list, and I can say decision results, and then OK, and I have here. OK, so what I'm going to do here is that I'm simply going to say system out, and I'm going to say decision management result, get result.
So what is returned in the decision result? Is the result that each node is returned?
Yes. So the question is, what is inside this object? Think about it this way. It will be a little bit, I believe, simplistic if the API provided just directly the result without any helpful information. So the result of this contains two main things, the real result and your metadata. So to know if the decision evaluation was a success, so it could have been, it has been evaluated correctly, or if there are any error messages, you would also receive it as part of the decision. Because sometimes also the engine checks for validation. It provides you with the value that is correct, but maybe you didn't fully specify according to the standard some, I don't know, the output data type. This you have to do. We are still able to know for sure that the output is correct, but you missed something from the validation, we provide it along. Or if the decision has failed in evaluation because you missed some input, for instance, I missed the age, you would receive as a result message, okay, I was not able to evaluate the decision because it was missing one of the requirement that was missing, and so on. So you receive two kind of things, the result and the metadata along with it.
Yeah, but does your API, so it's a decision model. If you look at the DRD, there's
Yeah.
multiple layers.
Yeah.
Does your API support the return on the values of one path in between?
Yes, absolutely. So the question is, do you have also a breakdown about the different evaluation? Yes. This is actually also used by the Trisotech editor that I've shown. So you can see really the different steps. This model is very simple because the most of the audience actually didn't say that they were aware about DMN. So I prefer to have a very simple example so that everybody can see. But you can think, all of you can think about when this model is going to grow. So I'm going to have different decisions. I want to check the results at the different level. So it's for debugging or for analysis purposes, auditing, everything. So yes, we support a returning of the different decision that we evaluated.
Maybe offline, but what is it? I would like to know the API call to return to different levels.
Yeah, it's actually this one. We can see offline. I can show you in details how does it work. So let's just run quickly this one. And OK, so I've entered 35, and I had some previous accident. So the result is 1,250. This is compatible with the decision tables that we defined before. Question?
So if we would not use the third party which provide the modeling for this DMN model, with the out of box of this here, what kind of editor you provide to just create a raw model for this? Can you make this your API?
OK, so with rules today, we don't offer yet an open source diagramming editor. So that's the reason why I'm showing one of the partners. And it's not only for the demo, it's really for you as an example, because you can have, I don't know, models that I find with Trisotech or with any other of the partners or with any other provider that you can draw this diagram. Is Trisotech, when I've made the run, behind the scene they have the rules execution engine for doing so. So you can think about, OK, in this case I have my file in the kjar. What I did is that I downloaded the file from the web app of the Trisotech editor, and I just placed it here locally. Similarly, you can have any other editor that I don't know that provides you the DMN file, and you can execute it. The open source diagramming editor, free open source from Drules, is in the work. Okay, so we are doing also a free and open source editor. It's just not available just yet. But I want to reiterate, and this is really important for me, that I want to pass this message, is an additional option for you to choose from. Because what we are really interested is to collaborate on the basis of openness, collaboration, and the standard. So it's a way, this demo is prepared this way because I wanted to show really the different parts of the integration. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, you had, OK. Sorry, the question is?
Timeline of the editor, when do you anticipate that the first version will be out?
OK, can we take this offline? Because I'm working on it, but I cannot confirm any date. Please, question.
So in the production, do you see people using a digital tool or simply writing stuff in code?
Okay, the question is how the tool for diagramming fits with a production use. I believe that the strategy of deployment are up to you. What I believe is important, in my view as an engineer, is that the execution engine that goes in production, for instance, if it's Drool execution engine, as we support conformance level 3, it doesn't really matter where the DMN file comes from. As long as you provide a valid DMN XML file, we have there is a module in the Drool execution engine that do validation. So an hypothetical deployment strategy would be you receive the DMN file from one of the department. You put it in a CI/CD pipeline. As part of this CI/CD pipeline, you have the key DMN validation also as a step coded in this pipeline. When all is green, you can go to production using the Drool execution engine, for instance, and you can be sure that in this case it will work and it will evaluate the solution. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Excellent. One more question?
Does DMN allow this seems like a stateless execution.
Yes.
Does it allow stateful execution?
Excellent question. So the question is, this looks like a stateless execution. Does it provide some stateful? The standard itself, it's a stateless. So it's in a functional programming approach. If I don't know if you're a developer, but it will be like a pure function. It's like you provide the inputs and we don't memorize. We may have some strategy behind the scene about caching and memorizing, but I think that is too much detail. What you have to think about is that the DMN standard in itself is a stateless execution. It's like a mathematical function. It doesn't keep memory about what the previous execution. Of course, it doesn't mean that you cannot use it in a stateful environment. So say that you want a stateful application, you may have the result of the DMN execution cached somewhere or as a state object somewhere. Up to you. Does it answer the question?
Yes.
Excellent.
Follow-up question.
Sure.
Can I include the DMN as a rule in the CEP system?
Can I include the DMN as a, sorry?
So it's in the complex event processing system.
Okay.
Can a DMN model be included as the root logic?
Okay, so the question is about integration with the CEP environment. I would say yes, why not? The thing is that at a certain point, in a CEP, for instance, you would call out to a DMN decision to evaluate. So it becomes like a constraint. You want to say, okay, these are some conditions that I want to check. The DMN in itself is not tailored to a CEP Field doesn't have any CP-oriented capability. It doesn't have a before and after. But nothing prevents you to define a field custom function that reason on timestamps. So you would have logic that falls in between, after, before. You can use it. It's more about an integration with other complexity. Yeah. Okay. So this is we've seen so far in this demo on the editor. We've seen it as a code. I'm going to show now an example of integrating with a REST API. That maybe it was one of the previous questions. So I'm going to fire up Postman. The example is going to be a mix of REST API between XML and JSON. I don't know which is your preference, but I just wish that I could show a mix of both. So Drools provides a key execution server. So it's a server that you can have remotely to execute and demand decisions. Okay, in this case. Rules and business process, and as well we have an extension for decisions. So there are some REST API that checks. I'm sorry for the little font, but this one is the only one that I cannot change. So trust with me. Here I'm calling the key execution server, and I'm asking, okay, are you online? Are you available? What I can ask to the key execution server is that give me the containers that are deployed currently. There are none. And actually, I'm going to deploy the demo that we just done. So in this local code, what I have is a kjar. A kjar is defined by its GAV coordinates, so group ID, artifact, and version. And in this case, it's the org-drules DMN demo version 1.00. Okay? So I'm going to say, key server, please provide for me a key container with these GAV coordinates. And it has provided to me. So here is saying container demo 1 successfully created. So now I have a key execution server that has provisioned to me a key container with that ID, demo 1, and it's already available a kjar with inside the DMN model. What I can do here now is that I can call this decision. We've seen in the test before it was executed locally. Here is executed remotely. Here is an example with JSON. So what I'm going to do now is that if I send this post request, I've provided two inputs. One is the age now is 2025, and I didn't have any previous accident. So the result that is computed as part of it is that the insurance total price is 2,000. So this is still coherent with the decision table that we've done before. And this is a way that you can use DMN executions, the DMN extension of the key execution server to run decision remotely. So I hope this is an example as we had before about our REST API. Of course, we support everything that is being an extension of a key server. We support everything that is expected from the key server for those of you that maybe already used. So we support XML serialization and JSON serialization as per this example. Of course, here is indeed for a case where you have I don't know, a mobile application or a web application that wants to call directly. Okay, if instead you wanted to have a Java application that instead of executing the DMN model locally, it is executed remotely, you can still have it. This is we provide as part of the key server extension. We provide a client, and there is some code that I prepared here, and this is a standard from any key server interaction. So before you can start an interaction with the key server, basically you need to locate and to start a conversation with it. So this is all standard. This is the local address of my key server, my credentials, not very security oriented, just for the demo. And out of this code, when I start, I have a client that I can communicate with the key server to. A chance for me to show you about the documentation for DMN. We have also some quick starts that you can follow in order to know how to execute the code locally or remotely. And I'm just going to copy paste the code from there. So I have a key server client, so I can communicate with a server, and now I'm saying I need the tailored client to communicate for the DMN extension of this key server. So this is the key client I have. And then what I can do is that I can create the content and copy. I'm going to copy everything from it. So here I just miss DMN. Of course, this is import for me. OK. This is an example, so I'm going to replace. Now I'm going to say age now is still 25-year-old, but the had previous incidents. It's true. So I'm going to cover the last part of my model, and here you have several parameters that you can call the same things that you've done locally. You can do remotely. For remotely, actually, we have encoded some defaults. So if the container contains one and only DMN model, you can omit to specify it. So I can simply cut away this. Oops, sorry. you can simply cataweight these parameters. Of course, if by chance in the kjar you have more than one, you will receive an error. But this is something good for you to have some quick checks. And what I have here is that I have a key server client. I'm going to say, OK, I'm going to communicate with the DMN extension. I'm going to supply the same input variable with just different values right this time. And I'm going to receive it from remotely. So DMN result, I can say, give me the list of the result. And here, in answer for loop, go. And similarly as before, I can say, OK, DMN decision result. I can ask in this case, for instance, what is the name? Okay. And I'm going to output in this case some more. I'm going to output the result. And if it has any error.
Can you also output the inputs to the decision?
Sorry, can you say it louder, please?
That particular decision result, you're returning some extra metadata here. What does the decision mean? What does it has errors? Can you also, do you have a call to return the inputs to the decision inputs?
OK, not from here, but you can still use the API to retrieve it. I can. So the question is, if you can locate with the API the inputs that were provided to this decision. There is not one specific one-line call for it, but you can use the API to do that. I will show you later, maybe offline, about this specific detail. So with this, I can run it. So this is called app Java. OK, go. OK, so what I've done here is that behind the scene, this client has performed the same REST call that I've shown you with the Postman app, but instead it's a Java client. So for those of you Java developers, it's a more API-oriented way to interact. And it's a way for you to call remotely to key server. So same things that I've done with the Postman, except that it's done with the key API. I think, is the timing good? Still 10 minutes, right? OK, excellent. So just one last thing that I really wanted to show you is one example with the interaction between BPMN and DMN. So locally, I have one Workbench instance running. And I have here a sample project with one BPMN process. OK, it's not a complete process. Let's say it's more of a pattern for those of you that are already more BPMN oriented. But I believe that is a helpful pattern. So it's the one that we've seen at the beginning of the presentation. We have a task here that the mandates it calls out to a DMN execution. Then from this task, I'm going to call this one. From that task, I'm going to call this decision model. So this is a more complex model than the one that we've seen so far in the demo. So we are having here the DMN is being delegated. So a DMN evaluation is being called. The result of the gateway will decide if to go to this path or this branch. You will have here is a simple task for doing a system out. And in the case that it will go to this branch, it will print on command line this output. What you can do, so you have here indeed is an integration between a DMN process, sorry, a BPMN process, and what you have here, oops. Okay. Okay, never mind. And basically, this task node is going to delegate out to finally. It's going to delegate to a DMN model. We've seen that the model we can identify it by its namespace and its name is going to receive some input, application, and I'm interested in only one result, is the final routing. So you see how I provide as a DMN input the application, as a DMN output I receive a routing. This is consistent with this one. So indeed, the input of the model is application, the output is routing, and once I have this as an output, I can then have it to take this one branch or this other. I have here a very simple application.
How do you reference the DMN model in the BPMN diagram?
In the BPMN diagram, in this case, it's a specific task, the similar one that you use, for instance, for calling out the rules decision evaluation. You can now use it to evaluate for DMN. Maybe it's a bit little, but there is defined DMN, and what you need to provide is the namespace and the name of the model.
So if you expand that to 3 parameters, can you show me how?
Yeah, so here you have, as a namespace, I've coded as a constant the namespace and the name of the model that I want to execute as part of it. Okay. So in the IDE, I'm going to show you this in the IDE. And basically, is showing me the result of that output. That is, okay, I have, in this case, I have a standard test for running a GBPM model with rules. And once I've run it, I provide, again, a more structured data. So this is a follow-up to your question that you had before about complex data type. You see in this case, application, the input of my DMN model is a more structured data type. In this case, I've used a map. You can as well use a annotated POJO. And I provide different parameters. This is used both in the BPMN process and then is provided as an input to the DMN model. The DMN model decides, based on this criteria, that the routing is going to be accept, and therefore it will take this branch of the BPMN process, and therefore it will print out on my console that the validation has been done, and so we are pleased of your interest in our products. So this shows an example of an integration. Of course, during this demo, I presented really very simplistic model. I think it was a best way to have like a very simple example in order to understand. Of course, you can have more complex model. This is one example from Bruce Silver book. And you can have here all the different constructs that the DMN specification provides. So for instance, the loan to value, here I have a model for deciding for a mortgage. I will provide different inputs in order to come to the final decision if it is pre-qualified or is declined for the application. And you can have, as we've seen, you can have one of the decision node is a simple field expression for a ratio. You can have behind this payment, it's a field function for a more complex mathematical expression. You can have as well behind, for instance, this node, you can have a boxed context to invoke the decision. So I'm not going to show this example now. Maybe we can take it offline if you're interested. I think I just wanted to show you that the DMN model, of course, can still grow in complexity, but still manageable because thankfully the standard provides very visual way to represent all these hierarchical way to represent decisions. So this is the way that you structure how you come to a final decision, and you have different graphical constraints in order to to elaborate on this decision model. So I have just 2 minutes left to wrap it up. So this was just the backup. And what's next? So I hope that this demo was interesting for you, and this presentation as well. I would like to give you some pointers that I believe are very important. First of all, the DMN specification, as I spoke, is open, is accessible. So you will find it on the OMG website. You can find all the specification and all the information. You have as well on the Drools website, you have all the links to the Drools DMN execution engine for conformance level 3 execution. There is a specific chapter in the Drools documentation on how you execute it. I've shown you a little bit briefly as well. There are code snippets that you can copy and paste and adapt pretty quickly. And finally, a couple of pointers. One is from Trisotech, so the modeler that I've shown you today. They have a quick start. I invite you to check it out. It's a good way to see if you are interested in their modelers and start with it. Just to reiterate, behind the Trisotech decision modeler, the execution engine is Drools. So you have it directly embedded there if you want. And finally is a Bruce Silver book about DMN method and style. I found this book very, very helpful. It was very important for me before I knew about DMN myself. So I think it's a great resource. So these are the pointers. And with that, I thank you for your attention.